Hey kids, Miss Lisa again. So this week I'm doing a very, very short video called Bible Story Review. All right, so you know how every week when we're in class, we always review our story from the week before? Well, I'm going to do that each week for you, okay? So this will just be a short video where I'm going to ask you the questions that pertain to last week's story, just like I would do as if we were in class, okay? So you remember what last week's story was? What was last week's story? All right, well, if you can't remember, you can always go back and watch the video again. That's a good way. It's not cheating. You can watch it again if you want to do that before we answer questions, okay? I'll give you a minute. Go ahead. Go watch the video. Okay, did you watch it? Okay, good. All right, so here's your questions for last week's story. We're going to start with what the story was really about. It was about a person. And there was a person in that story who had two different names. What were his names? You know this. Okay, right. First, his name was Saul. And then at the end, his name changed to Paul. All right, so first Saul and then Paul. And it's easy because they rhyme. Saul, Paul, Saul, Paul, Saul, Paul. So which one comes first? I'll give you an easy way to remember. Saul starts with the letter S. And Paul starts with the letter P. And you can always remember because people always ask for salt and pepper, right? When you're at the dinner table, you say, "Can you pass the salt and pepper?" You never say, "Can you pass the pepper and salt?" Never. You always say salt and pepper. So that's how you always know it's Saul before Paul, salt before pepper, okay? So first his name was Saul, and then his name was Paul. Now, when he was Saul, he had kind of a job, and it was like a really bad job. What did he used to do when he was Saul? Yes, he used to persecute Christians. Remember, we talked about what that meant, persecute? It means he used to go around and find people who believed in Jesus, and he would beat them up, and he would be mean to them, and he'd put them in jail. That was persecuting Christians, and that's what he did. That was pretty much his job when he was Saul. So when we first meet Saul last week, we see him walking down a road, and he's walking down a road to a particular town. This is hard. What was the name of the town? Remember in the video, it was on like a big sign. The name was on a sign. What was the name of the town? Okay, Damascus. He was on the road to Damascus. Now, that's a tough word to remember, Damascus. So I'm going to give you a way to remember. You know how everybody nowadays wears a mask? You can think about Paul, Saul, on the road to Damascus. You like my mask? You see, who is that? Oh, that's my baby dog, right? So Damascus, let me get that off. All right, so that was the road he was on, Damascus, okay? Damascus, all right. Now, when he was on that road and he was walking down, he saw something. What did he see? Yes, it was a very bright, bright light, a really bright light, so bright that it knocked him down on his back, right? And then a voice came out of the light. And whose voice was it? Okay, a little tricky on this one, because sometimes we say it was the voice of God, but really specifically, it was Jesus. It was Jesus who was talking to him out of that light because he said, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" So he was really saying he was Jesus, because that's who Saul was really persecuting me. So it was the voice of Jesus. So something happened to Saul, he was still Saul at that point. Something happened to him in his body after he saw the light. What happened? Right, he went blind. He couldn't see. The light was so bright that he couldn't see at all when the light went away. And because he couldn't see and he had to get to the town, how did he get to the town? Remember? Remember his friends who were with him had to lead him by the hand to the town? Yes, in our story, Saul's friends were my doggies, right? Yes, but those were his friends. They didn't see anything and they didn't hear anything. So they didn't know what happened to him. All of a sudden, he fell down on the ground and then he couldn't see anymore. They were totally freaked out. But they led him to the town, just like he needed to do. He had to get to the town because in the town, God sent someone to heal Paul of his blindness. Who was it? Yes. It was a character that we learned from about last year, Ananias. And we remember his name because we remember him as Banananias, right? It's easy to remember that name if you think of a banana. It's Ananias, but we call him sometimes Banananias, right? That way we remember his name. So Banananias went to the town and healed Paul and he could see. Now, after Paul could see and he was in the town there and he decided he was going to follow Jesus, how long did he stay in that town and study about Jesus? It was a long time. It was a really long time. 3 years. He stayed in the town for 3 years to study everything about what Jesus said and what he did and the miracles he did and the people he was with. And he knew everything there was to know after 3 years. And then he got a new job, right? And this is how we remember Paul. Now he's Paul. We remember him as the greatest ever. The greatest missionary, right? Because Paul, after he studied for 3 years, went all around the world telling people about Jesus. And that's what a missionary does. So those are your review questions for last week's story about Saul, Paul, and what happened to him on the road to Damascus. All right? So practice those review questions because you know I'm going to ask you them again probably every week. So next week, we'll add on the story review questions from this week's story that Miss Sue's going to teach you, okay? Mwah! Love you guys. Bye.